All righty, so we're gonna give it maybe 30 more seconds. This is Natalie, and we'll get started. I want to thank everyone for coming in and being on time. And so, not to punish you for being on time, but we're gonna start in a few moments. We got a couple people. I think we've just let some folks in on the from the waiting room, and so I'm gonna give it about 30 seconds, and then we're gonna get started. Okay. So I'm just looking for some folks on the list. Okay. All righty. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to what we hope will be add some levity and some light to your Sunday evening. We have been laughing, heading up to this call. If you all had been on here half an hour ago, you just heard us all laughing. So hopefully that mood continues. So we look forward to hearing your questions and just having a good time this evening. And so we're going to go for about an hour or so. If it looks like we're going to go a little bit longer, we'll make an announcement and let you know so that folks who want to stay on can stay on. We're going to moderate it as if we're going to be about an hour. But if it looks like, we want to go a little bit longer, we'll go a little bit longer, not a lot longer. Again, my name's Natalie Stokes-Peters, and I work with Black Classic Press. Been working with them for about 18 years now. And our headquarters, Black Classic Press's headquarters in Baltimore, Maryland. It was founded in 1978 with the intent to publish books, well, obscure books, by and about people of African descent. In case you don't know, you can find that information and find our website at www.blackclassicbooks.com. And one of our folks will probably post that in the chat so that you all can have that information. Another thing to note about Black Classic Press is that we are probably one of the few publishers, regardless of any race, creed, or color in this country, who also owns their own printing company. And so that allows us to print our books, and that's rare. So that's something many people don't know. The name of the company is bcpdigital.com. You can find it. If you got something you need to print, you need to either call us at 410-242-6954 or visit the website, agooddaytoprint.com. We'll also post those in the chat session for you as well. So remember, you got something to print, you need to contact us, okay? So with that, a couple other things that I want to say about our call tonight. So we're doing this call with Sean Cosby. His book, Blacktop Wasteland, is not a book that we publish. However, given what we're about, which is really Black books, from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, we're supporting another Black author, and that's important to us, and that's what we're doing today, is showing our support and our love for the brother and his book. And to that same extent, we are also going to acknowledge, I think I have a couple of our Black booksellers who are also on the call. So if you got the Constant Contact email message, you saw that there were about 5 or 6 sellers that we mentioned. And those are Black booksellers, and they are weathering this storm. We had a call a couple of months ago about what's going to happen with Black books, and they've been doing okay, but we need to continue to give them our business and our support. And so I may end up doing it. I see there's a couple people who are on, but I know that we have Troy Johnson. Troy is there. He's waving his hand for you now. I think he's on your front screen. Owner and director. Look at him. He's got his copy of the book for aalbc.com. And then I also know that we have Janet Jones on the line from Source Booksellers. I don't know if she's on my front screen anymore, but she's also on the line. We'll make sure, just like we sent it out, we'll do a recording of this call, and we'll let you know when the recording's available to watch, and we will include their websites on there. So if you haven't purchased your copy yet, and we know you're going to want to get it after this phone call, those are the folks you need to go to get it, okay? So I'm giving you a directive there That's you for the last 18 years, Paul will tell you I don't have a problem with giving a directive. It may not be followed, but I'll give it out anyway. So on that note, what I'm going to do is give you a very brief, I'm going to read Sean's bio, and then I'm sure he'll talk a little bit more about himself in a moment. So here's about the author, Sean A. Cosby. Sean is a writer from southeastern Virginia, now residing in Gloucester, Virginia. Did I get it okay? Okay, Gloucester. Is it Gloucester?
Gloucester. Gloucester, yeah, you got it.
Gloucester. I can't say it like a Virginian. Virginia. His short fiction has appeared in numerous anthologies and magazines. His short story, The Grass Beneath My Feet, won the Anthony Award for Best Short Story in 2019. He is also the author of My Darkest Prayer and Brotherhood of the Blade. His writing is influenced by his experience, now listen, his experience as a bouncer, construction worker, retail manager, and for 6 hours, a mascot for a major fast food chain inside the world's hottest costume. Okay. When he isn't crafting tales of murder and mayhem, he assists the dedicated staff at J.K. Redmond Funeral Home as a mortician's assistant. Okay, he is an avid hiker and also known as one hell of a chess player. Okay, so this is not your ordinary brother here. Maybe it is, I don't know, but if you read the book, maybe that makes a whole lot of sense to you. Okay, and I'm just gonna bullet point a little bit about Paul before I turn it over to him. And he doesn't know what I'm gonna say, so he may or may not like it.
Yeah, I don't know why you're doing bullet points. Come on.
We don't have enough time. We don't have enough time to share everything. But Paul is a native of Philly, Pennsylvania. He's also a Vietnam vet, as well as a former Black Panther. Most notably, what I would probably say, one of the ways that I know Paul best is as an avid collector of Black books. I've been in awe when if you've ever seen his collection of books, it's something to definitely be in awe of. So he's got a vast collection of books by and about us, y'all. Even at this point, he continues as the director of Black Classic Press Publishing and BCP Digital. And unless there's something else, I would say that if anyone has questions, to please type those in the chat box. We will be reviewing those, seeing if we can come up with some themes. So what'll happen is that we'll do questions later on. So things that come up. I think a few of you submitted questions early. We're gonna look to get to those. So if you have anything, please feel free to put it in your chat box. And with that said, I believe I'm ready to turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate Natalie. Whenever we think about doing things, Natalie, like Natalie said, she's been with us. We've been together for 18 years. And she helps provide the structure to most of the things that I do around Black Classic Press. So I really appreciate her opening this up. So look, we're gonna have a great hour and a half or whatever it is. This is gonna be great, this is gonna be fun, this is gonna be memorable. I'm telling y'all that in advance. I will give you your money back if in fact you disagree, okay? I promise you that, I'll give it back. But for right now, before we start, let's take a moment. We're gonna do a moment of silence, a libation, if you will, without the pouring and without the ceremony, to take a moment and really, you know, brother, our brother Black Panther left us, you know? And one of the things that happens is his death comes at a period when we've lost so many brothers, so many sisters, through whether it's police violence or violence period, or whether it's COVID or whatever it's been. I just think it's appropriate if we take a moment of silence and just acknowledge those who have joined the ancestors over this time and those who have left that are significant to us. Can we just take a moment of silence, and then we'll come back in and have our fun, okay? Now let's just welcome them in, okay, to this space with us, all right? Not like they're someplace else. Let's just take a moment. Thank you. So we're gonna go ahead and start. And Sean, what, you know, like this is special. We talked a little bit earlier, and I was telling you how special this is to me. Most of the people on this call, the majority of people on this call are people that I know. The majority of people on this call are family, you know? The majority of people on this call are people who have supported the work that I've done over the last 40, close to 50 years. Some of them go back to the Black Panther Party with me. I mean, that's what this is. You have Austin Allen, who I saw come in, and Lynn French, you know, people that you say you're gonna do something, they come forward immediately. People like Cheryl, my former wife and Ta-Nehisi's mother. Those are the people who are on this call. And so like, this is family to me. So this is like really, really special. Sister Wangaza and so many other people are there that I get to introduce you to. And I get to introduce you in a way that I'm very proud to introduce you. And I'm proud for the folks on this call to put their arms around you, as I'm sure that they will, and to welcome you and to welcome the genius that you bring to our community with stories that will enrich us, with stories that will empower us, and will give you the strength on the other side, you know? So this introduction formalizes that meeting of us and you, like you're now in our circle, and we welcome you to that circle. And that's what I want to say to start, okay?
Well, thank you so much. I can't, for someone who makes a living with words, it's hard to articulate how much that means and how great that feels. And it's an honor to speak with you and be here and talk about books and growing up and the beauty of Blackness and everything that comes along with that. And, you know, speaking about, you know, Brother Bozeman, you know, it was a great loss, but he left so much great work behind. It really touched me. It really, I remember going to see Black Panther and crying at the end of it and just realizing, you know, this is for the first time in my life, I'm 46 years old, the legends on screen look like me. The superheroes look like me. I didn't have to pretend that I was Batman with a tan or that I was Captain America with dreadlocks. That those beautiful Black brothers and sisters, they were me. They were people that look like me. They look like people I grew up with. And it's just, he leaves behind an incredible legacy that we all we're all lucky to have. So just want to say that.
Got it. One of the things that can you guys do this in chat? I'm just curious if you've already read Sean, if you already have read Blacktop, Wasteland, or any of the other work that Sean has done. Can you just drop a note in chat? And at some point, Chris, Roz, I'll ask one of you guys to tell us. Sean, I'm thinking that most people on the call have not read your work. And that's actually cool, you know what I mean? It's cool because we are going to have you read later. But I'd like to start a little bit early. You have got so much acclaim. This book came out in July, but even before July, you were starting to get off. You were blowing it up. I mean, everybody really loved your work, and especially my very, very good brother friend, Walter Mosley, who you certainly list as one of your influences. But before Walter, can you talk about how you came up, your early influences, how you got here? I'm going to ask you like one or two questions along those lines, like how did you get here? That would be important for you to share with us.
Yeah, certainly. So I grew up in a small town in southeastern Virginia. My mother and father, my father was a fisherman. My mother was an assistant teacher in the school system. And they separated when I was young, as a lot of people do. And we moved in with my grandparents. And my grandmother was a voracious reader. My grandmother read everything. My grandfather, she would read to my grandfather at night. She would read to me as a child. She would let me read her story. She had a huge collection of a periodical called True Story and Bronze Thrills and these sort of soap opera pulp fiction magazines. And so I would read those. And then my mother was a voracious reader as well. She read a little bit different than what my grandmother did. She was a fan of Greek mythology, but she also had, books by Alex Haley and Ernest J. Gaines and in the house. And then I had an uncle who lived with us who was a huge fan of Chester Himes and John D. McDonald. And so what would end up happening, I'm dating myself a little bit. We didn't have a lot, so we didn't have cable. We had 3 channels on the TV, and I used to get the job of adjusting the antenna, so I had to hold it. So like, can you see it? Can you see it? And so what ended up happening was a lot of times I would get those books that my grandmother and my mother and my uncle, when they were done with them, so I would read. So my early literature education was just a wide panoply of different genres and different authors. And so I was introduced to authors like Donald Goins at an early age, and authors like Iceberg Slim and all those folks, but also, the authors like Raymond Chandler and Arthur Conan Doyle. And so being in a house that we didn't have a lot of material wealth, but we had such a love of knowledge and reading. And also I grew up around folks who were, I like to call them barbecue pit pontificators and and family gathering orators. I grew up with people who were characters, who loved to tell stories, who were great raconteurs, and so that's always been a part of my lexicon, so to speak. And so when I started actually getting serious about my writing, I tried to bring all of that into my work: the humor, the pathos, the history, the love of language. And it starts in the house with my mom and my grandma and my uncle, and growing up in that small little farmhouse in Virginia. And it's something that I carry with me everywhere to this day.
Your writing, and one of the things that has struck me so much is that background that you're speaking of now, growing up in that small town, in that small house. And your writing tells us about that. And that's something I don't know anything about, because everybody I've read about grew up in the city on the concrete and all that stuff, man. So I'm curious now, so family is a strong influence on you. Where'd you go to school, Sean? Where did you, do you have a college experience? So how did you get that together? And who were your mentors in that experience?
So my first real mentors outside my family were members of my church. I went to a church called Emmaus Baptist Church in Matthews County. It's a church in the middle of the road, as we like to say. It's at the fork in the road. And my mentors there, and most of these folks have passed on and joined the Essence. But there was a woman named Beatrice L. Bobo. And Miss Bobo was the first Black teacher in Matthews County. She graduated from Hampton Institute before it was Hampton University, and she was the president of the NAACP for almost 40 years in our small town, and she was my Sunday school teacher. And Bobo was the first person outside of my family. You go to school in a small town, and you go to school in a town where I went to school at, that's in the shadow of Confederate statues and stuff, and you don't always feel valued as a student. You don't always feel valued as a person. And Miss Bobo was the first person outside my mama and my grandma who really made me believe that I was special, that made me believe whatever I wanted to do, I could do it. And all the kids that I went to church with have gone on to do things. And a lot of that comes from that incredibly potent sense of pride that she helped instill in us. And then there was also another person in the church, Deacon Linwood Lee, and he was another individual who pushed us. And he was a self-educated man. He didn't finish school, but he was a voracious reader. He was the first person to introduce me to the French philosophers like Albert Camus and Proust. He was, and this was someone, like I said, who quit school in the 5th grade to work on fishing boats, but he educated himself, and he also instilled this sense of pride. And they made me realize early on that to just be good, you got to be twice as good. And so they always, as the kids like to say, had our backs, and they made me feel like anything was possible. And those folks still are with me to this day. I can still see Miss Bobo. I can still see Miss Bobo cutting her eye at us while we were cutting up in Sunday school class. And she would a lot of us kids that grew up in that church, we grew up poor. And so she would, every Saturday, she would have us come over to her house, and we would have a formal dinner where we would sit down and learn, outside in, and which spoon which fork is a salad fork, and all of that. And so, I remember one time I was asking Miss Bobo, why are we doing this? I am never gonna go to no dinner party where I'm gonna need to know how to do it. And she said to me, she said, Sean Cosby, she said, I don't want you to ever say that again, because you don't know where you're gonna go. You don't know what you're gonna do. So you're gonna need all these tools. And so those people in my church, to this day, I'm still a member of that church, and those folks, I still carry those memories with me. But I also had educators. My 4th grade teacher was an African-American woman named Lolita Payton. And she was the first person to really identify that I had a bit of talent with words, and that I like telling stories. And she gave us an assignment about, she had us take a classic piece of literature, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and rewrite the ending. And we had to write it the way we wanted to write it. And I wrote this long, elaborate ending. And instead of her saying, oh, well, you didn't do the assignment the way I wanted or exactly right, she fostered that desire in me to tell my own stories. And so I had a great bit of support growing up. Now, when I graduated high school, I went to college at Christopher Newport University. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish. My mother got ill, and so I had to drop out. But even after leaving college, I still took those lessons of self-education that I learned from the people in my community, and my grandmother, and Miss Bobo, and Mr. Lee, and Miss Payton, and Miss Jackson, and Mr. Bone, and all the people that supported me. And so I never stopped trying to educate myself, and I never stopped trying to be a writer. I did a lot, like they said in the bio. I was a construction worker, I was a bouncer, I've worked retail, I've worked on fishing boats, I've worked on a farm, planting flowers, and I never stopped wanting to be a writer. And so that sense of pride and that sense of self that was instilled in me in that little house in that little town, it still travels with me today, wherever I go. And I've, like you said, I've had, people that I admire say nice things about the book. Walter Mosley, Dennis Lehane, Stephen King said something the other night on a live stream. And so all of that is great, but I think there's a sense of humility and a sense of calmness that comes from coming where I come from and growing up the way I did. And so I never let it I got a big head already, so it ain't nothing that they can say to make it bigger. So Paul, I think you muted. I can't hear you.
You're back on mute, Daddy.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Someone is, I don't know whether you have that control or what, but someone is muting a brother over here. I guess y'all don't want me to talk.
I can hear you now, Paul. I got you
So
now.
I'm glad. I'm glad, man, because somebody really put the stuff on me. I had a big question too, man. It was a great big question, man. I'm going to reduce it down, okay?
Okay.
Look, so I know that folks are recognizing your work now, but who did you look up to? Who were your writers? Who were you influenced by that kept you in the game? And how, like, so two things on that. What kept you in the game? Who kept you in the game through inspiration? And how did you get published? I mean, how did your manuscript get published?
Okay, I'll answer the first part first. So the writers that kept me in the game, that kept me interested, that kept me trying to step up my skill level. We've talked about Walter Mosley. I can't say enough about him. He's one of the great, not just crime writers, he's one of the great writers of the 20th century. Walter he's a gift to us, and he has a gift that he shares with us generously. And I ever since Devil in the Blue Dress all the way to Debbie Doesn't Do It Anymore, I love Walter's work, and he's the high bar that I'm aiming to reach. He's the high bar that I'm aspiring to. I don't think I got there yet, but I'm still trying. And there's other writers that aren't necessarily crime writers. Eric Jerome Dickey is a writer that I look up to, that I think was and continues to tell wonderful stories about the Black experience that are non-stereotypical, that are non-codified, if you will, in a way that is unfair and denigrating. Omar Tyree is another writer that I look up to that I think was wonderful. A writer that influenced me greatly was James Baldwin. I'm a huge James Baldwin fan. I love his work, his essays and his fiction. I think he's just one of the great minds of the 20th century. Somewhat underrated, in my opinion. I don't think people still give him his due. I really don't. You see that, if you ever see that debate between him and William Buckley, he wiped the floor with William F. Buckley. So it's like, I love James Baldwin. Other writers, Alice Walker is a writer that I looked up to. My mom's a huge fan of hers, so I got her dog-eared copy of Color Purple. It's so many writers that I admire that were telling stories that maybe weren't my story geographically speaking, but they were telling my story as an African-American person and a person of color. And so those writers are folks that I look up to and kept me, again, trying to sharpen my tool and make my stuff better. Now, as far as how I got published, let's see, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. So back in 2010, I had written on and off. I kind of come into writing and left it. But I got serious in 2010. I was like, I'm going to get serious. I took a creative writing course, and I said, I'm going to button down, and I'm going to finish a book. And I didn't, but I actually finished a short story. And I finished a book later. And the book was published by a small company. It was a science fiction book called Brotherhood of the Blade. It didn't do so well. And then later on, I published a short story. Now, I had originally wanted to be a sci-fi writer and a fantasy writer. And even though I was a crime fiction fan, I didn't think that was my wheelhouse. And my sci-fi and fiction and horror, nobody wanted it. It wasn't selling. And so a friend of mine, who's a belly dancer, went to New York City, and she performed a show. And after the show, she went to this bar. And in this bar was a guy who managed the bar named Todd Robinson. He had a publication called Thug Lit, which was a crime periodical. And so when she came home, she said, hey, I talked to this guy, and he needs writers. He needs people to fill out his magazine. You should send him a story. Now, I had never written a crime story because I come from a small town, and I don't write whodunits, because in a small town, it's not a whodunit. Everybody knew who did it. It's can you prove it? We all know who done it. It's not a mystery. And so I said, well, maybe I'll write a crime story about something that I know, or something happened to somebody I know. So I wrote a story about these two brothers fighting over an inheritance, and it's called The Rat and the Cobra, and it got published. And that was my first paying story. And I wrote a couple more crime stories. And so then in the fall of 2015, I wrote a novel called My Darkest Prayer. It's a short mystery novel. It takes place in the rural South. It's about a protagonist who's of mixed race heritage. And it talks about his struggle growing up in a small Southern town. He's not wanted by, the white side of his family. And the black side of his family sometimes feels uncomfortable with him. And he's a former deputy who quit because the sheriff department was corrupt. And he is investigating the murder of a Southern Baptist minister. And I met a gentleman named Austin Camacho, who runs a independent firm publisher called Intrigue Publishing. And they published that book, and it did all right. It got a lot of notice. Some people noticed it, and some people said some really nice things about it. And so I wrote what would become Blacktop Wasteland in the fall of 2016. And I tried shopping it around, and I wasn't very successful by myself. And so I tried to get some agents' interest, and a lot of agents passed on it. And so in the fall of 2018, I went to this big crime convention called BoucherCon, and it was held in Florida. And I was down there, and there was a panel about Southern crime fiction. And a friend of mine reached out to me, a guy named Eric Pruitt. He said, "Hey, man, I got this Southern crime fiction panel, and there's no black people on it." He said, "I think that there needs to be somebody of color to speak about, the experience of writing crime fiction in the South." And so I was like, "All right, I'll do it." And the panel was a big success. And after the panel, guy comes up to me, and he holds his hand on. He said, "Hey, my name's Josh Gessler, and I'm an agent." He said, "And I'd love to see what you got going on." And I said, "Well, I got this crime novel about a black guy that's a getaway driver." And he gave me his card. He said, "Well, when you get home, send it to me." I'm like, "All right." So I got home. I didn't send it for like a month because I didn't believe it. I was like, "Oh, he's full of crap. I ain't gonna worry about it." And my wife kept bugging me. She's like, "You need to send it in. Need to send it in." I was like, "I'm not gonna do it." And finally one day she opened up my computer. She's like, "Send him this story. Send this man this story." I'm like, "Okay, all right, calm down, Jesus." And so I sent him the story. That was in November of 2018. He took me on as a client in December of 2018. And in 2019, they sold it to Flatiron Books for a 2-book deal.
Wow.
So that's the story. Wow. How that happened. So everything, I owe everything to my wife. She take credit for it. So
look, so I just to move us up to your reading,
mm-hmm.
you write your characters. We have Bug, who is our main character,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who is impressive in his love of the life that on one side that he wants, but who is really, really becoming more and more conscious of the life that wants him
mm-hmm.
on the other side.
That's a wonderful way of putting it. Thank you. That's
of course, he wants that too now.
Yeah,
once he understands it wants him. But you spent some time not only with Bug. You have an interesting way of balancing the conflicts within your characters and bringing them out. And I think you referred to this earlier, talking about how you wanted to write these characters as flawed characters because of their humanity. Can you talk about your character selection, your
mm-hmm.
character development? You've got black characters, you've got white characters, and it seems to me that you're giving each a type of humanity.
Yeah.
Cardboard fixture.
Yeah. I grew up reading crime fiction where a lot of times characters are very wooden. They're either a tough guy or a tough, as they used to say, a tough dame, and they don't have a lot of depth or complexity to them. And I knew, telling tales out of school, but I knew some tough characters growing up. I knew some tough old boys and some tough old women, and they were never just tough. They were never just aggressive. They were people. Yeah, you didn't want to catch them on the wrong side, but at the same time, they had Christmas with their kids. They celebrated birthdays, they laughed, they cried. And so I wanted to create characters that were that type of complexity. I wanted, with Bug, I wanted him to be strong and tough. And he definitely is a brother you don't want to cross, but at the same time, he loves his little boys. He loves his daughter. He loves his wife. He's full of doubt. He's full of angst to a certain extent, because as you said, he used to be a getaway driver. He used to be a part of that criminal underworld, and he got away. His wife tells him repeatedly, "You got out." And so, yeah, he, like a friend of mine said, if he just listened to his wife, the book would be 7 pages long. But So again, the theme here is listen to your wife. But he's also a character of nuance, but also his antagonist. He is, he takes a job with these good old boy rednecks, Ronnie and Reggie Sessions, the Session brothers, and they're also complex. I wanted them to be more than just cardboard cutouts. I didn't want them to just be cannon fodder. And so talking about his wife, Kia, and his mom. And, I think for me personally, when you're writing fiction with African-American or characters of color, I want us to be able to be the full spectrum of humanity. I don't want to be the token or the sidekick or the magical Negro or, the overly virtuous, upright citizen. I want us to be everything because that's what we are. We are everything. We're not monolithic. We're human beings with full range of emotions and complexities and feelings and wants and desires. And so I tried really hard to present that. There's a couple of really bad characters, but there's no evil characters. They're characters that are all shades of gray. Some people read the book and they really love Bug, and then some people read the book and they're frustrated with him. And they're frustrated with him as he could do so much more. And some of the things that hold him back are out of his control. And some of the things are his own doing. And I think when you're writing to give a reader the best experience possible, you have to have that give and take. You have to have things that the character does wrong that creates conflict of their own volition, and you have to have things that happen to the character. The external versus the internal, pushing at each other. It's like the opposite poles of a magnet. Those two things pushing each other, repelling and attracting each other. And I think that's what makes the best fiction that I like is when you fully embrace that idea. Just to tell people a little bit about the book if they don't know, Blacktop Wasteland is about Bug Montage. He's a former getaway driver who has opened an auto mechanic shop, and as the book opens, he's under intense financial pressure. He has a daughter from a previous relationship that wants to go to college. He has a mother who is terminally ill in a nursing home who's about to get kicked out because of a clerical error. He has 2 sons with his wife who need braces and glasses and new shoes, and his business is going over because a new chain moved into town, and all the white folks decide they want to go over to the white mechanic shop now. And so he is fighting all of those external issues, but he's also fighting internal issues. His father disappeared, and I don't like saying his father abandoned him. A lot of people, his father disappeared at an early age, and there's an inciting incident as to why that happened. And so he's dealing with those complex issues about the love-hate relationship he has with his dad. He's desperate to be a better father to his children than his father was to him. And so that internal pressure fighting against that external pressure drives him to make some unfortunate choices. And so we get to see him deal with the ramifications of those choices.
That's beautiful. So that can lead into, do you have a selected piece that you can share with us? And then we'll move into questions.
Yeah. I've got a piece. This is put my glasses on, put my specs on. This is a little bit further into the book. And this is at this section in the book, Beauregard, Bug, is talking to his oldest son, Javon. And Javon, like a lot of kids, little pictures got big ears. So he knows that his father and his mom are in financial straits. They're in trouble. And he wants to help. Even at 13, he's trying to help. And so this is a conversation between Beauregard and his son. And so as this section starts, the son has told him, hey, I know we're in some financial trouble. So Beauregard, I'll start with this. Listen, don't you worry about Precision or your mom getting another job. All you got to worry about is hitting them books and getting through high school, Beauregard said. I wish I could just go to work. I could get a job helping Uncle Booney. I hate school. It's boring. The only thing I like is art class. I can do that on my own, Javon said. Beauregard drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. He knew Javon was struggling in math. Beauregard had tried to help him. He tried his best to unravel the Pythagorean theorem or scientific notation for Javon, but he knew he was a piss-poor teacher. He couldn't seem to explain angles and variables to Javon in a way that made sense to his son. Beauregard just seemed to get it, and it was hard to articulate how he got it to someone else. He figured Javon felt the same way about drawing. His son was smart and talented, just in a different way. Beauregard's daddy used to say, you didn't call a fish dumb because it couldn't climb a tree. Beauregard held his hand up in front of his son's face. You see the grease on my hands? I've washed them 5 times today and it still won't come all the way off. Now, don't get me wrong. There's no shame in working with your hands for a living. But for me, it was the only choice I had. It don't have to be that way for you. Now, listen, you want to go to auto diesel school when you get out and get a job working on race cars? That's fine. You want to go to VCU and take art classes and be a graphic designer? Hey, that's fine too. You want to be a lawyer or a doctor or a writer? Ain't nothing wrong with that either. Education gives you those choices. Beauregard sat back against the driver's seat of the truck. Listen, when you're a black man in America, you live with the weight of people's low expectations on your back every single day. And they can crush you right down to the goddamn ground. Think about it like this. It's a race. Everybody else has a head start and you dragging those low expectations behind you. Choices give you freedom from those expectations. Allows you to cut them loose. Because that's what freedom is. Being able to let things go. And nothing is more important than freedom. Nothing. You hear me, boy? Beauregard said. Javon nodded his head. All right, then. All I want you to worry about is keeping your head in them books. I'll take care of everything else. Now help me get your brother inside. We don't watch him. He'll be out here all night fighting with that damn plant, Beauregard said.
Thank you. Sean, nothing seems to go right for Beauregard. I mean, right for him. But he's got a love, and I don't want to take any place, but I'd like for you to look for something else, because that reading was nice and compact, and if we could probably get another one in if you could pull something out. Okay. Look, I really love the fact that this is a man who loves his children, but it's very difficult for him to express that love.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves his daughter from that first relationship, and he can't even tell her how much he loves her, how beautiful she is.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you have to go there. Can you pull something else? And we did get a note asking what page are you reading on. Can
the
you
first
share
page,
something else with us, and then we'll go ahead and open up for questions.
the first section was from page 99, and I will find something else. Let's see. I think I will go to the part about his daughter, because that's
I think that's really, really.
I like that section.
Complex.
Yeah. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, I think that those parts, it's hard for Bug to like really be honest about who he is and what he is and who he is. Let me see here. Oh, I got it. I went too far. But here we go. Okay. We'll talk. And Bug's daughter is named Ariel. He had her when he was about 17 in a relationship that didn't go well. She's of mixed race, and so he struggles to try to speak with her. He struggles to just be a father to her. Some of that's his fault, and some of that's the fault of her family, who don't want to accept that she's half black. And so I'll just read a little section in this section. This is on page 55, and she's in a convenience store. He walks up to her to talk to her. Ariel was standing in front of the drink cooler. She was sporting a pair of cut-off denim shorts and a black tank top that Beauregard thought was at least one size too small. Her mop of brownish black curls was piled up on top of her head in a loose bun. Beauregard's dark chocolate jeans and her mother's French and Dutch genetic code had given her a light complexion. Her light gray eyes were a gift from her grandmother. "Hey," he said. She turned, gave him a once-over, then turned back to the drink cooler. "Hey," she said. "How's the Mustang holding up?" he asked. "I'm driving it, so it's doing all right, I guess," she said. She grabbed a drink out of the cooler. "I met your friend, Little Rip, the one with the teardrop tattoo." It's not a tattoo. He had me draw it on him with my makeup pen, she said. She pushed an errant lock of hair out of her face and then poked out her bottom lip and let out a gust of air. It was her tell. It was the thing she did when she was upset about something. He had watched her do it the same thing in the car seat when he wouldn't let her have another piece of candy. What's wrong? Ariel shrugged her shoulders. Nothing, just getting ready for graduation. Me and all the other dummies who couldn't graduate with the rest of the class. Hey, you ain't no dummy. You got a lot going on, he said. Yeah, like mama getting her third DUI and wrecking my car. Of course, there ain't no excuse according to her and grandma, Ariel said. She shook a bottle of juice lackadaisically in her left hand. Hey, don't worry about them. You just concentrate on college and getting that accounting degree, Beauregard said. Ariel blew air over her bottom lip again. What? Beauregard said. Since I won't be 18 in January, Mama has to co-sign for my student loans. And she said she don't want to put her name down or nothing like that. She said I should just take classes at J. Sargent Reynolds and get a job until January, Ariel said. I could sign for you, Beauregard said. I don't think Kia would like that, do you? Ariel asked. She put one hand on her hip and kept shaking the bottle of juice. It's okay. I'll just get a job at the hospital or Walmart or something. Go to school in spring, she said. Her body language said she was resigned to the fact that college was on hold for now. But she didn't sound resigned to the idea. In fact, she sounded pissed. Beauregard thought she was about to blow up on him. He felt like their conversation was on the verge of devolving into a cliche confrontation. She would start screaming at him about why he hadn't done more for her. She would ask why he hadn't taken her and raised her in his own house. And he would respond that he had only been 17 and fresh out of juvie when he got her mother pregnant. He readied himself to take whatever came out of her mouth. He deserved it. Ariel deserved a better father and a better mother. She deserved a father who wasn't barely treading water. She deserved a mom who wasn't eating OxyContin like Tic Tacs and washing them down with vodka. She didn't deserve a grandmother who took one look at her tawny skin and cranked up the Fox News as she tried to pretend her granddaughter wasn't half black. But Ariel didn't scream at him. She didn't ask him anything. She just shrugged her shoulders. It is what it is, I guess. Hey, I got to get ripped to work, she said. Beauregard stepped aside. He wanted to ask her for a hug. He wanted to wrap his arms around her and tell her he was sorry he hadn't been stronger. Apologize for not taking her from that viper's nest of a household. Tell her that every time he went on a job, he gave her mother half his earnings. Let her know he fought for her, actually fought her grandfather and her uncles and her mother for her. That's why her Uncle Chad still walked with a limp. He wanted to pull her close and whisper in her ear that her grandmother filed a restraining order to keep him away. Wouldn't even accept child support from him. That once he got married, he filed for custody, but the judge took one look at him and his record and threw the case out of court. He wanted to squeeze her tight and say he loved her just as much as he loved Darren and Javon. He wanted to say all those things. He wanted to say them for such a long time, but he didn't. Explanations were like a-holes. Everyone had one, and they were all full of crap. All right, then. Well, let me know if you have any problems with the Mustang, he said. Ariel shook her head. See you later, she said. He watched as she walked up to the counter, paid for her drink and her gas, and strolled out of the store. As she stepped across the parking lot, it was like he was watching a time-lapse movie in reverse. She was 16, then 12, then 5. By the time she got to the car, he could see her in his arms, just after she'd been born. Her little fist had been balled up like she was ready for a fight she was destined to lose because the game was rigged and the points didn't matter. Through the big picture window, he saw her get in the Mustang and tear out of the parking lot spinning tires. Like grandfather, like father, like daughter. He'd tell himself later that he had slept on it, that he had mulled over the pros and cons and finally decided the benefits outweighed the risk. And all that was true. However, in his heart, he knew that when Ariel had told him about skipping college, that was the moment he decided to take the job with Ronnie Sessions and hit the jewelry store.
It's a beautiful place.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. And since my mic is on, I'm going to do the clap.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So look,
I was going to say, Paul, he just mentioned the jewelry store. And one of the questions that we had come in earlier was a question about the jewelry store. Hold on, let me see if I can get it.
Nah,
Yes.
Can I just say this? And I'm gonna get out of the way. We're at 6:50. Obviously, we're going on beyond 7. So we just want to let folks know that we're going to roll this on through, okay? And we're probably going to about 7:30ish, and with of course everyone's permission. Wait, Nat, you got it.
Okay, and now I just lost it.
You were supposed to be looking for it. I was giving you time.
Okay. All right, so here we go. Because you mentioned the jewelry store, and I haven't read the book, so this is interesting. Okay, so the question came in from Anna Christian, and her question says, during the jewelry store robbery, so now everybody who hasn't read the book know there's a jewelry store robbery. It happens, okay? The narrator mentioned Eric, the young man Bug helped out by taking he and his pregnant wife to the hospital. Eric shows up in the jewelry store. Question, what was he doing there? Was he involved with Lazy and his outfit?
No, Eric was I didn't go into detail because I wanted to leave it kind of vague. But if you're talking about Eric, there's a scene in the book earlier where his wife or girlfriend has a baby, and he was there buying her a piece of jewelry to celebrate the birth of their child. Okay.
So Anna, you can send a note in the chat thing and say whether or not that answers your question that you were looking for. So hopefully that's enough. So we didn't ruin too much for anybody.
No, you haven't spoiled anything because I haven't said anything too complex about it.
and you know, like we're at a stage. The book is out now. There are a whole lot of spoilers already. But we are going to try to tread as carefully as we can.
Right.
You know, and we definitely won't give away the ending unless y'all push me. Unless you hopefully say it. Just kidding. Go ahead, man.
Can I do another question? Okay. So I think this is really, the questions are coming in. I think I've scrolled past who sent it over.
Mm-hmm.
But the question was whether or not there was an audiobook. Now, wait a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it started by mentioning that they loved your voice. So I think part of it is there an audiobook? And if so, did you read it? Because I think they want to hear your voice.
Okay, thank you for that. But I did not, there is an audiobook, but I did not read it. But the narrator who does it is incredible. His name is Adam Lazar White. And if anybody had a grandmother like I did, you watched Young and the Restless when you were little. He was Nathan on Young and the Restless. So he's if you gotta, you know, hey, anybody that grew up like I did, you know Young and the Restless, you know Victor Newman. So you know he was an actor on Young and the Restless, and his narration is pitch perfect. It is the way he comes up with the voices is the way I heard them in my head. It's remarkable. So thank you for the compliment, but no, he's a much better narrator than I am.
Okay. All right. Can I do another one?
Yeah.
Everybody good? Okay.
Yeah.
So now this one is a little bit longer, but I think we talked about it before the call. So this is where someone asked a question about, you mentioned that your family didn't raise no punk. This is someone who had looked at other reviews and read things online. Mm-hmm. And so they have a question about that. And they said, you know, they take that to mean you were raised by to be a strong, intelligent Black man. Mm-hmm. What precise memories do you have about those moments when you felt yourself being welded, if you will, into the man you are today? And will we see any of those experiences transpire in Bug's metamorphosis in Blacktop?
Oh, yeah. A lot of the stuff in Blacktop Wasteland are based on experiences either myself or friends of mine had growing up as African Americans in a small Southern town, like I said, in the cradle of the Confederacy. And so I'll give you an instance. So I have a little thing I do in my writing, and it's unique to me. I think it's kind of weird, but it's my book, so I do it. Anytime a character in my book uses a racial epithet, uses the N-word, they get their teeth knocked down their throat. And I make sure that happens. Because unfortunately, again, growing up in a small town, people will try you. They will try you. And you have to be ready to mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically defend yourself. And I think that's one of the things, like my grandfather used to tell me all the time. He said, you know, don't start no fights. You don't have to start a fight, but you damn sure better be ready to end one. And I think that's not always a physical representation. Sometimes you have to be able to defend yourself. You know, growing up in a small town, I had a job where I was working in a retail environment, and I always had to be ready to defend myself. And those lessons. I had to be able to defend myself verbally, emotionally. I had to be able to defend myself when somebody calls up to the store and they speak with me, and then they come to the store and they want to talk to the manager that they spoke with. Well, that's me. And then I've had people say, he sounded so well-spoken on the phone, and like, yes, that's me. I'm well-spoken. Thank you. And so you grow up in an environment like that. You learn those lessons. You learn, and I think every person of color learns those lessons. But I learned them in a place where it could be dangerous to hold on to the lessons, and you had to be strong. And I think when I was being kind of flippant in that tweet that the person mentioned about growing up and not being raised, but not being no punk, but there's a certain amount of strength and that it takes to grow up in an environment like that. I think some people think that if you grow up in a small southern town and you're African American, that you're kind of submissive and kind of soft. And I think people make that mistake at their own peril. I think that people don't understand what it means, because here's the thing: there's a certain segment of society that wants to claim the South for themselves, the neo-Confederate, apologist, alt-right, whatever you want to call them. They think that they own that. No. My grandfathers and great-grandfathers and grandmothers, they paid for that land in blood. You don't own that history. You don't get to define it. I'll be damned if I let you do it. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I put in the book, and that's what I put in Bug.
Okay. Here's another question for you. Did any of your characters surprise you? Is it possible any of your characters even took over the book from you?
Yeah, because one of the characters that surprised me, there's a character named Ronnie in the book, Ronnie Sessions, and he's a former partner, a criminal partner of Bug's. He's the one that comes to him with the jewelry store heist proposition. And Ronnie he started out being just an antagonist. He was just somebody to get the story going. But toward the middle of the book, he surprised me because I underestimated how smart he was as a character. He was actually more of a worthy adversary than I gave him credit for. And so some of the things that happened later in the book, anybody that's read the book knows what I'm talking about, they shocked me. I didn't think they were going to happen. And then once they happened, once I sat there looking at the screen as I was writing, I'm like, yeah, this is good. This is good. I like this. And so I was able to leave those instances in there. I think Ronnie surprised me. And I think Kia, Bug's wife, she surprised me in so much as that she demanded of me more agency. She wasn't just a stock character. She wasn't just somebody standing by her man, that she was somebody who loved her husband, but held him accountable. And I didn't anticipate that when I first outlined the book, but she just would not be denied. And so, she gets to say a lot of things that I think Bug is afraid to say to himself, and that he's not strong enough to say to himself. She calls him out. Like Paul was referencing earlier, she tells him early on, like, don't do this job. There's a he in the book, Bug owns a car, a 71 Plymouth Duster. It belonged to his father. It's a souped up race car. And she tells him, you don't have to take this job. You can sell the car. And he feels like he can't. It belonged to his dad. He can't let it go. And she's, adamant about that. She doesn't just say it and let it go. And she not only wants him to sell the car for the financial boon that it would bring, but he needs to let go of that part of himself. And she loves him enough to tell him that. And so she surprised me as well.
Okay. So here's another question. Somebody's asking now about the editorial process, and they want to know who your editor was, and then also, were you all always on the same page?
Yeah, so my editor at Flatiron is a young woman named Christine Kopachik. And it was funny, we couldn't be more different. She's from the Upper West Side of New York City. I'm from down, as we say, down in the holler, down in near the Chesapeake Bay. But we were of the same mind, because when she read the rough draft, she loved the book so completely and so absolutely that I never felt pressured to make the book one thing or another. She really wanted me to express my voice. There were times where we had conversations where I didn't 100% agree with something that she wanted, or she didn't 100% agree with something I wanted, but we respect each other enough that we believe the other person knows what they're talking about. And so she allowed me and I allowed her to kind of have those conversations. But I will say this, 99.9% of the suggestions that she made the book better. I say that unequivocally. It was a pleasure working with her. That's not always the case. So I was very blessed to have that relationship.
Okay. And then I'll do one more, and we probably can do a time check or something for where we are. So Danya Craddock, who's also the owner of Doc Book Shop, which is in Fort Worth, Texas. So I didn't mention her at the beginning, but she is on, and she has a question for you.
All right.
So you all must laugh and talk, because you started laughing when I mentioned her name. So, okay. So she wants to know, what was your literary strategy in dealing with crime scenes in terms of research, private detectives, and things of that nature?
So basically, with Blacktop Wasteland, because it's a crime novel, the police are actually they're not even involved in the book from a large majority of it. And so as far as my literary process, I wanted to do two things. I wanted crime scenes, which sometimes include scenes of violence, to be earned. And what I mean is I didn't want to have any gratuitous violence. The book is violent. It's very violent. And it's, don't buy it for your sewing circle. It's a violent book, but I wanted those scenes to be earned. And the way you earn those scenes is that you balance them out with scenes of, like Paul was referencing earlier, the characters as human beings, as fully formed characters. And so we begin to care about these people. And so when Bug has to slam somebody's hand in a car door to get the information he needs, we may be recoil from the violence, but we believe in the character. And so I think that works in any of the books that I write. In my previous book, Darkest Prayer, there was some stuff I did in Darkest Prayer because that's a mystery, technical stuff, forensic stuff. But still, at the end of the day, the scenes in that book of murder and mayhem are all earned because I try to make you care so deeply about the characters that you will willingly go along for this ride.
Okay.
So, Ned, I don't know how we can do this, and I really would like the booksellers to presence themselves. Unfortunately, we can't deal with the. I guess if folks would take a minute and just let us know the range that they are, and so that we can begin to set faces to places. But look, guys, I have to ask you, please, if you could introduce yourself in 30 seconds or less, we can probably get through this because we don't want to get away from Sean, okay? Got a couple more questions to ask him. We want to close out. But I just think it's important, as booksellers, you're doing important cultural work for us. And I know that it's difficult and challenging at times. Did we presence the Oracle Set too? Look, the Oracle Set Book Club is with us. I want to make sure that I acknowledge the Oracle Set Book Club. They're the ones that gave me my wife. That's a whole nother story. I'll tell you about that sometime, Sean.
I'm waiting.
They're in the house watching and reading. They read everything, okay? But look, so can we, is there some way we can get the booksellers, how about if I call them? Is that?
Okay, I have my
okay.
I have my mouse sitting on Danya, and I'm going to ask her to unmute. So hopefully it'll bring her to the front screen.
Okay, good.
When that happens. If not, we'll go find her.
Yes. Okay, hi, Danya Craddock. I'm on the Doc Bookshop in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. We're one of the largest bookstores next to Pan African in Texas and the Southwest, and we are just happy and honored to be on this platform. We do sell the audio book that is available. If you have not got the audio book and the paperback book, we sell not the paperback, but the hardcover, all that's on our website. So check us out. You can reach us at thedocbookshop.com, where We do all the social media thing. We can do anything you can add, you can look for. We're out there trying to do it. So shout out to Paul Coast. Thanks for always thinking about us. And Troy, I know Troy, I see Troy somewhere running around here, and thanks a lot. I can't really talk to all these guys every now and then, but I'm happy we have platforms just to at least see each other. That's my 30 seconds.
You did it. You did it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. It means the world to me. I was just in Dallas. I was just in Texas last year, so I've got to come back and check y'all's bookstore out. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
please do. Thank you.
Okay, I think I have also, thank you, Danya. I've also unmuted Troy, I believe. So Troy, if you could give us your 30 to 60 seconds, that would be great.
All right, no problem. Thank you for doing this. This was terrific. I always enjoy what you guys do. AOBC.com is a website I launched in 1997. That's the little logo there, AALBC.com. I sell books written by or about people of African descent. I advocate for other booksellers, physical and online websites. I also advocate for independent Black websites. So regardless of what you're doing on the web, so I think it's important that we celebrate, support, and visit our websites. And so that's what I do. And
I just want to follow behind Troy. Troy is a person who I usually will call when I'm putting things together, and I'll sound them off on him. Everybody visit AALBC, and I'm saying that over top of all the others because Troy is the center place that you can get to all of the bookstores. He's taken the time to put together a site that links all of the booksellers together, and you can access all of the books. He's the smartest person that I know, the sharpest person that I know that is moving Black books and Black culture in a way that's accessible across the internet. And so Troy, I've always acknowledged you. We've known each other 25 years plus, and just continue doing the work you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I also want to say I do actually have in my little hands 9 left autographed copies of Sean's book, and get them while they last.
Thank you so much, man. I can't tell you how much it means to me and how just incredibly moving it is to know that you guys support me like that. It means the world to me, man. And it just, when you're an African-American writer or publisher or a bookseller, a lot of times, sometimes you feel like you're by yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to an event and I'm the only Black person reading, or I'm the only Black person there. And events like this with Paul and the folks, it just makes you feel so loved and so welcome, and you realize you're not alone. And I think that's the main thing that I'll take away from this, is that there's so many people out there that get you and understand you, and it just means the world to me. I can't express how much it means.
Okay, thank you. And then I think that, and somebody should message me, but there's one of the bookseller, I think Janet Jones, I think, is on the call, and I've asked her to also unmute her. There she is. Okay, I see her. So she's unmuted. Okay.
Hi, everybody. What a joy to have this opportunity. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Mr. Cosby, for your work. I love the fact that you're in this genre, and we need more talented, skilled, and creative people in this genre as well. So we are a nonfiction bookseller primarily in Detroit, Michigan. We've been doing books for over 30 years in this area. And I want to steal you away to have a virtual conversation with us on our oftentimes Friday night virtual author book talks.
I would love to do it. Thank you.
Yes. So you have to, we're on sourcebooksellers.com and sourcebooksellersonline.com. We've already put the book, I think we've already put the book on the online site so people can buy them. And we're part of Libro.fm, which is the independent booksellers audio possibility. And so we also are getting people to do that as well. Thank you so much for your reading. It's really excellent. I think that this arena of crime fiction is very helpful for us to have as Black readers and Black bookstores and so on, and not, it's another elevation past the rather pulpy, and I'm not taking anything away from it, chick lit that was so popular for a while. So thank you very much. I hope that we get to see you virtually, at least in Detroit. So be in touch with us, and we'll try to be in touch with you as well. Thank you, Paul. This was excellent. I'm going to have to leave because I have another square to get into.
Thank you, Janet.
Sure.
Is Charles and his wife from the Third Eye here? Are they still here? I saw them earlier.
Charles, Hannah.
They are, Chris? Charles Hannah, yeah.
Oops. Charles, ignore that request.
Charles?
Hey, how you doing? Hey, thanks, Brother Paul, for having us. My wife had to go to a meeting.
Okay.
Brother, the book is selling out. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon. The city is not on fire. Bookstore is on fire. I tell you, we're the only bookstore in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm just happy to be here, part of the family, Paul. Thank you. Brother Troy, I need to connect with you to get on that ALBC. So right on. Appreciate it, brothers and sisters. Much
Thank
love.
you so much. Thank you so much.
And I don't know, I think we've gotten everybody that was here.
Okay. And there's
I just have one thing. Go ahead, Nan. I'm sorry. Sally Ann McCartan just wanted people to know if you're trying to get Sean, she posted her email address and you can reach out to her.
Yeah, that's my publicist from Flatiron. So I would love to do events like this again with other folks that are on here, other booksellers. Yeah, please reach out. It like I said, it's just so gratifying and so heartwarming. And you, like I said, a lot of times when you do in this publishing game, you know, you feel alone. I wanted to give a shout out real quick. I'm a part of a group called the Crime Writers of Color. It was founded by Walter Mosley, Kelly Garrett, and Gigi Padian. And it's an online group mostly, but we're a support clearinghouse vent place where you can come and talk some trash about the way people doing you wrong or talk about events. We always look out for each other with publishers and agents trying to uplift crime writers of color, Black, Latinx, anyone that feels marginalized is welcome. So yes, definitely look up Crime Writers of Color. We have a website, podcast. Again, it just goes to making sure that you don't feel alone in this big, bad, cold world out here that we call publishing. So,
Got it.
Okay, so there's just two more. I want to mention two other book clubs who are here. There's the African American Literary Guild is also on with us today, and then Avid Readers Unite Book Club. So you all can wave your hands up so we can see who's all right. We gotta come up. All right. So there's probably one other question out there, and then we can probably get ready to close this out, I think.
okay.
And this is another one from my brother Richard Rowe in Baltimore. Here's a question. How does Bug reconcile the polar opposites of fatalism, i.e. the world he lives in, and freedom, which he proclaimed as the most important thing to him, i.e. being able to let things go? And will you serve? And will your answer serve as a roadmap for Black America?
I don't know about all that. I mean, I'll do the best I can. But as far as Bug, you know, it's like no pressure, brother, no pressure. But I think the thing with Bug that you have to understand is that Bug he's not your cookie cutter hero. He's not. If anything, he's in the tradition of flawed heroes like Oedipus and Ulysses and from classic Greek culture, or flawed heroes like the early 20th century flawed heroes like Gatsby and or like, you know, Coffin Ed and Gravedigger Jones from the Chester Himes books. He's doing the best he can. The best that we can hope for a character like Bug is that his mistakes are lessons to the next generation, to his daughter and his sons, and that they can look at their father and see what he did right and take those things and use them as a roadmap to find their own path, and look at the things that he did wrong and to use that as a roadmap to avoid his pitfalls. You know, Bug isn't perfect. He has a little bit of hubris. He's a little bit emotionally immature, but at his heart, he's, you know, a good man doing bad things for what he thinks are the right reasons. And so at the end of the day, what you can hope from him is that he serves as a lesson to the readers, to his children, that even though you may want to do the right thing or you think you're doing the right thing, you can't always control the consequences of the actions.
Mm-hmm. Sean, one of the things I don't know that you want to speak to this, but one of the things that I was impressed with from the first page to the last page was how fast the book moves. That the book, it's not a quick writing, it's just speed all through the book, which complements Bug. I mean, whose speed is an integral part of his being. But the book itself, the writing is not, I don't think you take shortcuts with your writing. I looked for this. I tried my best to figure out how it is that this book moves so fast. It's a fast book.
One of the things.
Is that your writing in general, or was that Blacktop?
That's my writing style in general. One of the things that I do, and you notice it if you read the book again, is that a lot of times I'll have a long descriptive paragraph, and then I'll have a dialogue scene with very rapid dialogue. You know, I don't even use like attribution tags. I don't do a lot of he said, she said. It's very rapid dialogue. Then it's a long descriptive paragraph. That gives the book a certain rhythm, a flow. It's almost like riding a bicycle. And so what happens is I don't, like, for instance, fight scenes. I don't let my fight scenes go more than a page, maybe a page and a half. If Bug and his wife are having a conversation, it's not a lot of internal monologuing and then he says something. It's a give and take. It's like a tennis match back and forth. And that's something that's just a style I developed because that's the way I like to read. And so I try to write in that way. My first book, My Darkest Prayer, is very similar. There's periods of contemplation, and then there's periods of really, and even if you look at the page, it looks fast on the page, the way the sentences are constructed. And so that's just something I do. I've veered away from that a little bit. My next book that I'm working on now is called Razor Blade Tears. I'll give you a quick elevator pitch for that. Two fathers, one black, one white, seeking to avenge the murder of their gay sons, and also find redemption for the way that they treated their sons when they were growing up. They didn't accept their sexuality. And so now that their sons are dead and it's too late to repair their relationship, the only thing they can do is seek revenge for their murders. And so it veers away from that style a little bit, but I think that's just my way. You know, that's just the way I tap, you know, that's the way I dance to the song. So that's pretty much my style. And that was kind of just, it kind of came out of nowhere. It's just that, like I said, that's the way I like to read. So that's how it's bled into my fiction.
Now, with your next book in mind and you're at work on it, will Bug come back to us again?
Well, here's the funny thing. I intended, I wrote it in such a way that if it did all right, then maybe he could come back. And if it didn't do all that great, then that could be the story too. I would like to write about him again. I want to see what happens to him. I want to see what happens to him in his relationship with his sons, what happens to him in his relationship with his wife and his child. And now that, you know, there's a lot of tragedy in the book. He's lost a lot. And how does he deal with that loss? And how does he move forward? And so there's definitely a kernel of an idea floating around in this big old cranium about talking about Bug and his family down the road, and see if they can maybe find a way back to a place of calmness and reclamation.
I think you will be rewarded by your readership if you continue that conversation with Bug. Okay, I think he's
one of my favorite characters. I love him. I think he's unique to me and my writing, and I put a lot on the brother in the book, so I feel sorry for him. I put him through a lot. So
good. Nat, how are we? We're ready to close out. Did we have any other questions? Do we have time for another question? Anybody else there?
I think.
Are we ready to close out?
I saw I think we've hit that. I did have a mention for 2 more book clubs at least. So look, Sean, you got book clubs ready to buy that book. So, and now they know where to go buy them. So it's the United Black Book Clubs of Pittsburgh is on the line, and they're saying they can't wait to get your book. And then Read Sister Read is also on today. So that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. I can't tell you how much, you know, Mr. Coates, it was a pleasure being here with you. being with your family. You made me feel so welcome. Like I said, it's a lot. Writing is a lonely endeavor. You know, writing is like telling yourself a joke for 9 months and then hoping everybody gets the punchline. And an event like this just makes me feel so welcome and so warm and gratifying. And I just feel so much love. And I just, you know, hopefully one day soon we'll be able to see each other in person. I would love that.
Sure. So Sean was telling me earlier that he calls, or he was calling Walter Mr. Mosley.
And he told me to stop. So
until Walter pulled him up. So Sean, you're probably the only person on this call that calls me Mr. Coates.
We did an event for 1A for NPR, and before the event went live, and I had talked to him previously, so I said, Mr. Mosley, how are you doing? He said, look, stop. My dad is Mr. Mosley. I'm Walter. Call me Walter. So I'm a Southern boy, so it's hard for me to get past that. So, but I definitely appreciate his support and his friendship, and I cannot tell you how much your support and has meant to me, and it means to me, and continues to mean to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna pay some bills.
Yeah, let's pay some bills.
Before we go pay all our bills, I want to thank Chris Coates and I want to thank Roz Coates. They're both on here.
Wave.
Yeah, Wade.
Yeah, Wade.
They really were the two folks behind the scenes, letting y'all in, capturing the questions, making sure the book clubs were captured. So if we missed you, we definitely apologize if we didn't get one in there. But they were, you all, if you look in the chat, you all were rolling in your comments and your questions. And so I want to thank them both and acknowledge them both for being on here and really helping this thing move. It meant a lot to me, and I think it really helped our call move along. And hopefully we got people's questions answered. Again, we will be posting this and we'll send out a note which has the call on there. So if folks want to do that, I can't recall if we were able to do all the chat information, but we'll post what we can. I think we were able to post.
I think we were able to do chats, yeah.
Or at least the I don't want to call it the subtitles, but I think that we were able to do something. Anyway, so we'll be sending whatever out we can produce from this call. We will do that. And now to pay the bills. So just so you all know, one positive announcement that for Black Classic Press in the month of August is that we republished the first title, Race First, which was written by Tony Martin. And for those of you who don't know, Tony Martin was probably at the time of his death one of the preeminent folks who knew something about Marcus Garvey. You know, he was well versed in Marcus Garvey, and he wrote several books. His press, which is the majority press, has been it's been active, but not very active. And we made an agreement earlier this year that Black Classic Press would take on republishing his titles, which is great. I mean, we've had initial response that's just been overpouring and really exciting about that. So we're excited. On Garvey's birthday, we were able to release Race First. Again, if you can head over to our website, I'm sure all the booksellers that are on here will probably be ordering it, so you can go to them as well. So right now we have inventory that was already in place that we're selling. And then once those copies sell out, we will be republishing our versions of the books. So that's just a good news thing, and we're excited about it. And I wanted to share that.
Can I say something now?
Yes.
Can I just add to it? Okay, so to be clear now, Tony died in 2013. So the press has pretty much been inactive. And also to be clear, Tony published the book Race First in '76. He and I knew each other around that time. And if you, I think we met right after he published the book. If you know the history of Black Classic Press, it was published in '78. I was really getting into Marcus Garvey, 75, 76. And Tony's book provided such a perspective on Garvey that it really helped me get my Garvey wings and provide the foundation for Black Classic Press. Reading Marcus Garvey made it very, very clear, and particularly Tony's Marcus Garvey made it very, very clear that what Sean is talking about on this call, the importance of us having our own and being able to do for ourselves, Garvey made it very, very clear to me how important that was in terms of publishing. So being able to go back and pick up the work that Tony was called from, to be able to do and republish the books of the majority press is a sacred honor to us. And we're going to do our best to keep those books available. And can I add to that? You may have been going here. We have one other, I'll just add to it. we have the book Journey of the Songhai People by Ed Robinson. Same thing with Ed Robinson. Ed Robinson died when he was 93 years old. He had kept our history alive and was one of our great, great articulators until the time he died. He was sharp and on it until the time he died. We will be republishing, again, the family asked us to take that on. So we'll be republishing that book as well, Journey of the Songhai People. Can I go ahead now? Good, thank you, thank you. Because I'll forget this, okay? Two other things that I'm supposed to deal with is telling you, like we've talked about Walter Mosley over and over and over during this call. Walter and I will be doing a call on October the 4th. He has a new book coming out, so we're gonna do that. We'll have information out on that later, but we'll be together October the 4th doing the call, and I'll ask all of y'all to come back and join us. And I'm also somewhere in between and probably before October the 4th, the very, very special call. And Sean, not to say this wasn't special with you,
no, I understand.
because it's been special. But we're gonna have a special guest, Joyce Moore Turner, join us. Joyce turned 100 years old last week. And I tell you, I put Joyce up against anybody on this call, and she'd blow you away. Her most recent article was published in the Journal of Caribbean Studies. I think it was like the month before last. Okay, that's how sharp she is.
Wow.
I was doing research for her up at the Schomburg when she was 98 years old.
Wow.
I brought that research back to help her. She finished the article in '99. It was just published. She's going to join us. She's a great mentor. She's been a role model for me. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with Joyce Moore Turner. Her father was Richard B. Moore. One of the books we published, The Name Negro, its origin and evil use. And Joyce has worked with us on 3 other books. Look, Nat, thank you very much. I know I cut across you, but I had to get that off my mind because I would have forgotten. Thank you. I'm so sorry. You got it. Take us home.
I guess somebody muted me like they muted you earlier, Paul. So look, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Folks really hung in here. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this call. I hope you enjoyed the book. We look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you again. I think that just about everybody who's on this call will be added to our email list, so you will get future notifications. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.
Thank you, everybody.
So much.
Sean, special thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Take care.
sir.
We'll
Thank
talk,
you.
okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Y'all be well. Bye-bye.
Stay well.
All right.
Everybody.
All right. They are getting off of this thing.
And say one time before I go, thank you guys so much. It was wonderful meeting all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It meant the world to me. It really did. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Sean. Really. I really enjoyed it. Everything.
Thank you guys so much. Y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. Get them greens. Go get them greens. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna close it out.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
We need a